The massive Valthari warship Death's Edge moved through the empty space like a metal whale hunting for prey. Admiral Kextall stood on the bridge, his 6 arms folded behind his back as he watched the stars. His ship was part of the great Valthari Empire, rulers of half the galaxy. They'd conquered dozens of worlds and made slaves of countless species. Admiral called out Scanner Officer Dexenol from his station. "We are picking up a signal. It appears to be a ship." Kextall's 3 eyes focused on the main screen. Joe. Me. The image that appeared made several crew members laugh. It was a human ship, but not like the warships they sometimes fought. This one looked old and damaged. Its hull was dark and cold. No lights blinked on its surface. It drifted through space like a dead thing. "It is a colony ship," reported Dexenol. "Humans call it New Dawn. Our scans show it has been drifting. For months, its power systems are failing." "How many humans are aboard?" asked Kextall. "FD-1000, Admiral. But they are all frozen in sleep pods. The ship's life support is barely working." This news made the bridge crew burst into laughter. The Valthari had always thought humans were a weak species, but seeing them frozen and helpless like this was even more amusing than usual. "Frozen humans," laughed Commander Veximer. "They cannot even keep their own ship running." "How pathetic." Kextall smiled with his wide mouth full of sharp teeth. "Bring us closer. Want to see these ice sleepers for?" Myself, as the Death's Edge approached the human vessel, more details became clear. The ship was huge, designed to carry thousands of colonists to a new world. But now, it looked like a tomb drifting through space. Ice covered many of the windows. The hull had scorch marks from meteor impacts. Admiral called out communications. "Officer Zelkith, I am reading life signs from the sleep pods. The humans are still alive, but barely. Their ship's heating system is failing. They will freeze to death soon." "How wonderful," said Kextall. "We've found ourselves a ship full of human popsicles." The crew laughed harder at this joke. "Do them." This was better than any entertainment they could buy. The mighty human race, reduced to frozen meat in metal boxes. Inside the human ship, Gavun Hoyen Woo Kim lay still in his cryogenic pod. His body was frozen, but his mind still worked in the deep, cold sleep. Round him, thousands of other humans slept in their own pods. Men, women, and children all waited for the day they would wake up on a new world. Dr. So-Young Lee, the chief medical officer, was in the pod next to the captain. Her frozen face looked peaceful, but inside her body, special chemicals kept her alive in the cold. She'd helped design these pods to keep humans safe during the long journey between stars. In another section of the ship, Commander Jamin Park, the military leader, lay in his pod surrounded by his soldiers. Even in sleep, his hand rested near where his weapon would be. The military pods were different from the civilian ones. They had special systems that could wake a soldier quickly if needed. Engineer Dong-Hyen Choi was frozen in the engineering section, near the ship's main computer. His pod was connected to the ship's systems, so he could monitor them even while sleeping. He had spent years designing this ship to be more than it appeared. Dr. Minho Yoon, the chief scientist, slept in the research section. His pod contained special equipment that kept his brilliant mind active even in the frozen state. He had discoveries to make when they reached their new home. The Valthari ship moved closer to the human vessel. Admiral Kextall ordered his crew to prepare boarding parties. They would take the frozen humans as prizes. Some could be sold as slaves. Others might be used for experiments. The rest would simply be kept as curiosities. Admiral reported tactical. "Officer Kextall, the human ship has no active weapons. No shields. No defenses at all. It is completely helpless." "Of course it is," replied Kextall. "Humans are a primitive species. They build ships like this because they are too weak to stay awake during long journeys. Not like us superior Valthari."
I'll die.
Boarding shuttles launched from the Death's Edge. They carried teams of Valthari soldiers armed with energy weapons and capture nets. The aliens were not expecting any resistance from a ship full of frozen humans. As the first shuttle docked with the human ship, the Valthari soldiers found the airlock system still working. The ship's emergency power was keeping basic functions alive, but just barely. The corridors were dark and cold. Their breath formed clouds in the freezing air. "Look at this," said Sergeant Nexkull, as he led his team through the ship. The humans built their ship like a metal icebox. No wonder they had to freeze themselves. The soldiers made their way to the first pod chamber. Thousands of humans lay in their sleep pods perfectly still. The aliens pressed their faces against the glass, laughing at the frozen humans inside. "They look so peaceful," mocked Corporal Texfer, "like babies taking a nap." The soldiers began taking pictures and videos of the frozen humans. This would be great entertainment to share with their friends back on the homeworld. The mighty human race, defeated by their own technology. More boarding parties arrived. They spread through the ship, exploring every section. They found the frozen colonists in their family pods, parents holding children, couples sleeping side by side. All of them helpless and at the mercy of the Valtheri. "Admiral," reported Sergeant Nexkull over the radio, "we have secured the ship. All humans are in frozen sleep. No resistance encountered. The ship is ours." "Excellent," replied Kextol. "Begin preparing to tow the ship to Research Station 7. The scientists there will be very interested in studying these frozen specimens." The Valthari began connecting cables to the human ship. They would drag it through space like a trophy. The frozen humans would become part of their collection of conquered species, but deep in the ship's computer systems. Something was watching. Something was counting. Something was waiting. The ship's central computer, designed by engineer Dong Hyan. Choi had been monitoring everything. It recorded every laugh from the alien invaders. It noted every insult and every threat. And it began to activate protocols that the Valthari had no idea existed. Dr. Minho, Yoon's special research pods were already beginning to warm up. Not enough for the aliens to notice, but enough to start bringing him back to consciousness. His brilliant mind was needed for what was coming next. The frozen humans looked helpless, but appearances could be very deceiving. The Valthari were about to learn that lesson in the hardest way possible. Admiral Kextol stood in his command center, watching the human ship being pulled through space by his massive warship. The sight filled him with joy. Another species had fallen to the great Valthari Empire, but this victory was different. It was not won through battle. Humans had defeated themselves with their own weakness. Communications Officer Zelkith called the Admiral, sent a message to the High Command. "Tell them we have captured 50,000 frozen humans. They will be very pleased." Zelkith's clawed fingers worked across his control panel. Within minutes, the message was sent across the galaxy to the Valthari homeworld. The response came back quickly, and it was filled with laughter. Admiral reported Zelkith. "High Command wants us to broadcast footage of the frozen humans. They want the whole Empire to see how pathetic this species really is." Kextol smiled his terrible smile. "Excellent. Let the galaxy see what happens to those who think they can challenge the Valthari." The alien crew began filming inside the human ship. They walked through the corridors, pointing their cameras at the sleeping humans. The footage showed thousands of people lying perfectly still in their metal boxes. Aliens made jokes as they recorded. "Look at this one," laughed Sergeant Nexkull as he pointed at Captain Hyan-Woo Kim's pod. "This must be their leader. See how peaceful he looks. He has no idea his whole species is about to become our slaves." The sergeant knocked on the glass of the pod. "Wake up, little human. Time to meet your new masters." But Captain Hyan-Woo Kim did not move. He lay still, his eyes closed, his body frozen in time. The aliens found this even more amusing. In another part of the ship, the Valthari soldiers had found the family sections. Here, parents and children slept together in special pods designed to keep families close during the long journey. Aliens thought this was the funniest thing they had ever seen. "They even brought their babies," mocked Corporal Texfer. How did they think they would survive in space with children? The soldiers filmed everything. They recorded themselves laughing at the frozen families. They made cruel jokes about human weakness. All of this footage was sent back to the Valthari homeworld, on the alien capital planet. Billions of Valthari citizens watched the broadcasts. They gathered in public squares and entertainment centers to see the frozen humans. The footage became the most popular show in the Empire. "Finally," said one citizen to another, Someone has put the humans in their place. It looks so small. And helpless, agreed another. How did we ever think they were a threat? The broadcast spread to every world in the Valthari Empire. On mining planets, alien workers stopped their jobs to watch the frozen humans. On military bases, soldiers gathered around screens to laugh at their former enemies. Even alien children were shown the footage in schools as an example of what happens to weak species. Back on the Death's Edge, Admiral Kextall received new orders from High Command. He was to take the human ship to Research Station 7. Scientists there wanted to study the frozen humans before deciding what to do with them. Fleet Commander Nexfer called Kextall to his second-in-command. Set course for Research Station 7. We have a delivery to make. The alien fleet changed direction, pulling the human ship behind them like a prize. The journey would take several days, giving the Velthari plenty of time to explore their new possession. More boarding parties were sent to the human ship. They brought advanced scanning equipment to examine the frozen colonists. The aliens were especially interested in the human leaders and military officers, Dr. Keltash. The Velthari chief scientist boarded the ship with her team. She wanted to study the human cryogenic technology. The aliens had their own methods of space travel, but they had never tried freezing themselves for long journeys. Fascinating, said Dr. Keltash, as she examined Captain Hyenwoo Kim's pod. The humans have developed quite advanced freezing technology. Look at these readings. Assistant researcher Meldock checked his instruments. The life signs are very stable, Doctor. The humans could stay frozen like this for decades. Yes, agreed Dr. Keltash, but they are still helpless. Their technology may be clever, but it has made them completely vulnerable. The alien scientists began detailed scans of the human ship. They examined the sleeping colonists, paying special attention to the military personnel. Commander Jamin Park's pod showed different readings from the civilian pods, but the aliens assumed this was just better medical equipment for officers. This one must be their military leader, said Dr. Keltash, pointing at Commander Jamin Park. His pod has additional systems, probably to keep him healthier during the journey. The aliens did not realize that the military pods had special features. They were designed to wake soldiers quickly if the ship faced danger. We're not looking for defensive systems. They saw no threat from frozen humans. Navigator Kyung-ho Nam lay in his pod in the ship's bridge section. His job had been to guide the ship through space to its new home. Now he was just another frozen trophy for the aliens to study communications. Officer Hyginesio was in the communications center, her pod connected to the ship's radio systems. The aliens found her equipment interesting, but primitive compared to their own technology. These humans are so backwards, laughed Technician Vexler as he examined the human communication systems. They use such simple methods to talk across space. Dr. Yujin Kong, the ship's chief scientist, was in the research section. Her pod was surrounded by scientific equipment that the aliens found curious, but not threatening. They assumed it was just human research tools. Look at this, said Dr. Keltash, as she studied Dr. Yujin Kong's pod. The humans brought their own scientists. They must have planned to study their new world. A waste of time, replied her assistant. They will never reach their destination now. The alien scientists began taking samples. They wanted to study human biology and technology. Small amounts of blood and tissue were removed from some of the sleeping colonists. The frozen humans could not resist or even know what was happening to them. Security Chief Wu Jinbei's pod was in the security section, surrounded by what looked like primitive human weapons. The aliens examined these with amusement. These are their weapons, laughed Security Officer Deximer. So simple, so weak. No wonder they had to freeze themselves instead of fighting. The mockery continued for hours. Every discovery about the humans was met with laughter and insults. The aliens filmed everything, sending more footage back to their empire. The frozen humans became a galaxy-wide joke. But deep in the ship's computer systems, something was changing. The central computer had been monitoring the aliens since they first boarded. It was learning their language, studying their technology. and preparing for something the Velthari could not imagine. The countdown had begun. Deep inside the human ship New Dawn, something was happening that the Velthari aliens could not see. The ship's central computer had been watching and learning since the moment the aliens first boarded. Now it was time to act. The computer had been built by Chief Engineer Sang-ho Kim before the journey began. Was a brilliant man who always planned for the worst. When he designed the ship's systems, he built in a special protocol. If hostile aliens ever captured the ship, the computer would begin waking up selected crew members. The protocol was called Silent Dawn. It was designed to wake the most important people first, starting with the captain and his senior officers. The awakening process was very slow and very quiet. The aliens scanning the pods would not notice the small changes in the frozen humans. In his pod, Captain Hyun-woo Kim felt the first effects of the awakening protocol. His body temperature began to rise by tiny amounts. Special chemicals in his blood started to work, bringing his brain back to life, but his body remained perfectly still. To any observer, he still looked completely frozen. The captain's mind slowly came back online. He could not move or open his eyes yet, but he could think. Remember what had happened. The ship had been on its way to establish a new human colony when the power systems began to fail. The crew had entered emergency cryogenic sleep to survive, but now the captain realized something was wrong. He could hear voices speaking in an alien language. The Velthari had found them. In the next pod, Dr. So-Young Lee was also beginning to wake up. As the chief medical officer, she was one of the first to be awakened by the protocol. Her brilliant mind started working even before. Her body was fully alive. She had helped design the awakening system. She knew exactly what was happening. The protocol worked by using tiny implants that had been placed under the skin of key crew members. These implants could not be seen by normal scans. They allowed the ship's computer to communicate directly with the awakening humans without the aliens knowing. Commander Shmin Park felt the familiar tingle of the implant activating in his neck. The military leader's training kicked in immediately. Even though he could not move, his mind was already planning. He began to assess the situation and prepare for action. Pilot Tae-Han-oh was the first to be fully awakened. His job was to be ready to pilot the ship if needed. The awakening process brought him to full consciousness, but he remained perfectly still in his pod. Through his implant, he could hear the ship's computer speaking directly into his mind. Hostile aliens have boarded the ship, the computer's voice whispered in his thoughts. 53 Velthari soldiers are currently on board, they believe. All humans are helpless. Maintain the illusion. Tae-Han-oh understood. He kept his eyes closed and his breathing slow. To the aliens, he looked exactly the same as before. But inside, he was fully awake and ready. Weapons specialist Ji-tae Park was next to wake up. His skills would be needed soon. The implant in. His brain brought him to consciousness while his body remained frozen. He could feel the ship's systems coming online around him, but the aliens had no idea what was happening. Weapons systems are standing by, the computer told him through the implant, awaiting your orders when the time comes. Ji-tae Park smiled inside his mind. The aliens thought they had captured a helpless colony ship. They had no idea they were standing inside a heavily armed fortress. Tactical Officer Yeonji Choi woke. Up next, her job was to coordinate the ship's defenses. Through her implant, she could access the ship's sensor systems. She could see exactly where every alien was located. She began planning how to eliminate them all. Medical Officer Hwa Young-shin was awakened to help with the revival process. Her hands could not move yet, but her mind was working with the ship's medical systems. She began preparing drugs that would help wake up more crew members when the time was right. The awakening process continued throughout the ship. Computer specialist Young Soo-jang came online and immediately began accessing the ship's hidden systems. The aliens had found the basic computers, but they had missed the secret military networks that were built into the ship's hull. All defensive systems are operational, Young Soo-jang reported through his implant. The aliens have not found any of our hidden weapons. Marine Commander Jun-ho Kwon was one of the most important people to wake up. Soldiers would be needed. For the fight to come, as he regained consciousness, he could feel his men beginning to stir in their pods around him. The awakening protocol was spreading through the military sections. The aliens continued their mockery, completely unaware that dozens of humans were now awake and listening. They laughed and made jokes as they explored the ship. They took more pictures and videos to send back to their empire. "Look at this one," said Sergeant Nexgol, as he stood next to Captain Heinwoo Kim's pod, still sleeping like a baby. "He has no idea his ship belongs to us now." Captain Heinwoo Kim heard every word. His anger grew, but he kept his face perfectly calm. Soon, the aliens would learn what happened to those who underestimated humans. Weapons engineer Mung-hoon Co. woke up in the engineering section. His job was to prepare the ship's secret weapons systems. The aliens had scanned the ship and found only basic colony equipment. They had missed the military-grade weapons that were hidden throughout the vessel. Communications. Expert Ah-young Kim came online in the communications center. Her first task was to establish contact with other human ships in the area. The new Dawn was not alone in this part of space. Other human vessels were waiting for the signal to attack. Intelligence. Officer Daejun No awakened in the intelligence section. His job was to gather information about the enemy. Through the ship's sensors, he began studying the Veltari vessels. He counted their weapons, analyzed their shields, and looked for weaknesses. Cyber warfare specialist Hyojin Yoon was brought online to prepare for electronic warfare. The aliens had connected some of their equipment to the human ship's systems. This gave her access to their computers. She began quietly planting viruses that would activate when the battle began. The awakening process was carefully timed. Each person was brought back to consciousness when their skills were needed most. The ship's computer coordinated everything, making sure the aliens never suspected what was happening. Dr. Min Ho-yoon, chief scientist, was awakened to help with the technical aspects of the plan. His brilliant mind had helped design many of the ship's secret systems. Now he would help activate them. Security Chief Woo Jin-bae came online and immediately began planning how to eliminate the aliens on board the ship. His security teams were waking up throughout the vessel, ready to strike when the moment came. The aliens continued their exploration, never realizing that they were being watched by dozens of awakened humans. They were walking through a trap that was slowly closing. Around them, the protocol was working perfectly. Soon it would be time to spring the trap. As more humans awakened from their frozen sleep, the true nature of their ship began to reveal itself. The New Dawn was not just a colony ship carrying farmers and families to a new world. It was something far more dangerous, something that Velfari had never imagined. Captain Heinwoo Kim was now fully conscious inside his pod. Through his implant, he could communicate with his awakened crew without making a sound. The ship's computer had connected all the awakened humans through a silent network that the aliens could not detect. "Status report," the captain's voice whispered through the implant network to his crew. "All primary systems are online and hidden," reported computer specialist Young-soo Jang. "The aliens have found less than 10% of our actual capabilities." "Weapons systems are ready," added weapons engineer Mung-hoon Co. "I think our cargo bays contain farming equipment. They have no idea what we really brought." The truth was that the New Dawn was part of a secret human military operation. Humanity had been expanding into Velthari space for years, but they had been very careful about it. They disguised their warships as civilian vessels to avoid detection. The ship's cargo holds did contain some farming equipment. False floors and fake walls were weapons that could destroy entire fleets. The aliens had scanned the ship and found exactly what they expected to find. They had not looked deeper. Marine Commander Junho Kwon was now coordinating with his soldiers throughout the ship. His men were waking up in their pods, but they remained perfectly still. To the aliens walking past their pods, they looked exactly the same as before. "I have 50 Marines ready for action," Junho Kwon reported through the implant network. "The aliens have no idea we are awake." "Excellent," replied Captain Heinwoo Kim. "Wait for my signal." In the engineering section, weapons engineer Mung-hoon Co. was working with the ship's hidden systems. The aliens had found the basic power generators and life support systems. They had missed the military-grade fusion reactors that were built into the ship's hull. "Primary weapons are charging," Mung-hoon Co. reported. The aliens will be very surprised when they see what we can do. The ship's weapons were hidden throughout the vessel. What looked like water tanks were actually missile launchers. What appeared to be air recycling systems were actually energy weapon arrays. The entire ship was a weapon disguised as a peaceful colony vessel. Communications. Expert Young Kim had established contact with other human ships in the area. The New Dawn was not alone. 3 other human vessels were hidden in the nearby asteroid field, waiting for the signal to attack. The Iron Fist and Starhammer are ready, Young Kim reported. Captain Min Jae Ko and Captain Hai-Won Lim are waiting for orders. And the silent strike? Asked Captain Hyun-woo Kim. Captain Taejin Park is in position. All ships are ready to begin the attack. The aliens had thought they were capturing one helpless colony ship. They had no idea they were about to face 4 heavily armed human warships. Intelligence Officer Dae-jun had been studying the Valthari fleet through the ship's sensors. He had found weaknesses in their formation and defenses. Flagship has weak shields on its lower hull, he reported. Their escort ships are spread too far apart. We can break their formation easily. Good work, said Captain Hyun-woo Kim. Send the attack plans to all ships. Cyber warfare specialist Hyo Jin-yoon had been busy planting computer viruses in the Valthari systems. The aliens had connected some of their equipment to the human ship's computers, giving her access to their networks. I have control of their communication systems, she reported. When the battle begins, I can cut off their ability to coordinate. Can you access their weapon systems? Asked the captain. Working on it now, Hyo Jin-yoon replied.
Oh.
Their computer security is not as good as they think. The aliens continued to explore the ship, completely unaware that they were being watched and analyzed by dozens of awakened humans. They laughed and made jokes as they prepared to tow the ship to their research station. Dr. Min Ho-yoon, chief scientist, was working with the ship's most secret system. Hidden in the ship's core was a gravity well generator. This weapon could trap enemy ships in place, preventing them from escaping or maneuvering. The gravity well is ready, Dr. Min Ho-yoon reported. Once activated, the entire Valthari fleet will be trapped. How long can you hold them? Asked Captain Hyun-woo Kim. As long as needed, the scientist replied. They will not be able to move until we allow it. Security Chief Woo Jin-bae was preparing his teams for the fight to come. His security officers were waking up throughout the ship, ready to eliminate the aliens who had boarded their vessel. My teams are in position, he reported. We can clear the ship of aliens in minutes, remember, said Captain Hyun-woo Kim. We need some of them alive for questioning. But make sure they understand their mistake. The awakening process was nearly complete. Almost all the key personnel were now conscious and ready for action. The aliens had no idea that their helpless prisoners were actually elite human military forces. Engineer Dongyan Choi, who had designed many of the ship's hidden systems, was now fully awake. He began activating systems that the aliens had never seen before. All defensive systems are online, he reported. The ship's armor is deploying. What the aliens thought was a simple hull was actually made of layers of advanced armor. Hidden panels began to slide into place, turning the colony ship into a fortress. Navigator Kyung-ho Nam was working with the ship's movement systems. The aliens thought the ship was powerless and drifting, but the main engines were actually in perfect condition. Engines are ready, he reported. We can break free from their towing cables whenever you give the order. Tactical Officer Yoon-ji Choi had been planning the attack sequence. She knew exactly how to coordinate the ship's weapons for maximum effect. All weapons are targeted, she reported. The alien fleet will be destroyed in the first 30 seconds of combat. The aliens had made a terrible mistake. They had assumed that frozen humans were helpless humans. They had never considered that the sleep pods might be part of a defensive system. They had never imagined that a colony ship might actually be a warship in disguise. Admiral Kextall stood on his bridge, watching the human ship being pulled through space. He was looking forward to the entertainment that 50,000 human slaves would provide. He had no idea that he was about to become the entertainment himself. The trap was almost ready to spring. Soon, The galaxy would learn what happened to those who underestimated humanity. The first sign that something was wrong came when Corporal Texfer stopped responding to radio calls. He had been exploring the lower levels of the human ship, laughing at the frozen colonists and taking pictures for his friends back home. Now, his voice was silent on the communication network. "Texfer, report your position," called Sergeant Nexgol over the radio. But there was no answer. In the ship's lower deck, Security Chief Wu Zhangbei had quietly emerged from his pod. He moved like a shadow through the dark corridors, his years of military training making him invisible to the alien invaders. He had found Corporal Texfer alone in a storage area, still laughing at the sleeping humans. The alien never knew what hit him. One moment he was mocking the frozen colonists, the next moment he was unconscious on the floor. Wu Zhangbei dragged the alien's body into an empty storage room and sealed the door. "One down," he whispered through his implant to the other awakened humans. Throughout the ship, other human security officers were waking up and moving into action. They had trained for this exact situation. The aliens had spread out through the vessel, making them easy targets for the awakened humans. Private Veltox was in the engineering section, trying to understand the human technology. He was so focused on the equipment that he did not notice Engineer Deng Haiyan Choi silently leaving his pod behind him. By the time the alien realized he was not alone, it was too late. "Sleep tight," whispered Deng Haiyan Choi as the alien collapsed. The bridge of the Death's Edge, Admiral Kextao, was beginning to worry. 3 of his soldiers had stopped reporting in. Radio signals had gone dead one by one. Communications officer Zelkith called the admiral. "Contact our boarding parties. I want a full status report." Zelkith tried to reach the soldiers on the human ship, but many of them were not responding. "Admiral, I am getting no response from 7 of our teams." "What do you mean, no response?" demanded Kextel. "Their radio signals have stopped, Admiral. The last transmission was 30 minutes ago." Admiral Kextal felt a cold fear creeping into his mind. Something was happening on that human ship, something he did not understand. Inside the New Dawn, Captain Haiyan Wu Kim was ready to begin the next phase of the plan. Most of the alien boarding parties had been quietly eliminated by his security. Teams, the remaining aliens were about to get the shock of their lives. "All teams, prepare for full activation," the captain's voice whispered through the implant network. "It is time to show these aliens what humans can really do." Throughout the ship, the remaining humans began to wake up. It's not just the military personnel, but the civilians as well. Families started to stir in their pods. Children opened their eyes for the first time in months. The ship that had seemed dead was suddenly full of life. Dr. Soyoung Lee was now coordinating the medical revival of thousands of colonists. Special drugs flowed through the pod systems, bringing the frozen humans back to consciousness quickly and safely. "All civilians are awakening normally," she reported. "No complications detected." The aliens who were still alive on the ship began to notice that something was very wrong. Lights that had been dim were now bright. Systems that had seemed broken were suddenly working perfectly. The frozen humans were starting to move. Sergeant Nexgold, the Death's Edge, the alien called frantically into his radio. "The humans are waking up. I repeat, the humans are waking up." Admiral Kextal heard the transmission and could not believe what he was hearing. "That is impossible. They are frozen. They cannot wake up." "Admiral, I am looking at them right now. They are opening their eyes. They are sitting up in their pods." On the human ship, Captain Haiyan Wu Kim stepped out of his cryogenic pod for the first time in months. His body was stiff from the long sleep, but his mind was sharp and ready for battle. Around him, his senior officers were also emerging from their pods. "The weapon systems, full activation," ordered the captain. Weapons engineer Meng Hun Seo's fingers danced across his control panels. Throughout the ship, hidden weapon systems came online. Panels slid open in the hull, revealing massive guns. Missile launchers emerged from what had looked like cargo containers. The New Dawn was transforming from a helpless colony ship into a powerful warship.
Wow.
The aliens watching from their ships could not believe what they were seeing. "It," called Scanner Officer Dexenol from the bridge of the Death's Edge. The human ship is powering up. I am reading massive energy signatures. What kind of energy signatures? Demanded Kextol, weapons admiral. Very powerful weapons. This is not a colony ship. This is a warship. Dr. Minho Yoon activated the gravity well generator deep in the ship's core. The effect was immediate and devastating. An invisible force field expanded outward from the human ship, trapping every Velthari vessel in the area. Admiral Kextol felt his ship suddenly stop moving. The engines were running at full power, but the Death's Edge was completely motionless. Engineering. Report, he called frantically. Admiral, we cannot move. Something is holding us in place. All ships in the fleet are trapped. Captain Hyenwoo Kim's voice suddenly filled every communication channel in the Velthari fleet. His words were calm and cold, speaking in perfect Velthari language. Admiral Kextol of the Velthari Empire, the human captain said. You made a mistake when you decided to mock my people. You thought we were weak because we were sleeping. You thought we were helpless because we were frozen. You were wrong. The alien admiral stared at the main screen in shock. The human ship was now fully powered and bristling with weapons. How had this happened? How had they been so completely fooled? You broadcast footage of my sleeping crew across your empire, continued Captain Hyenwoo Kim. You laughed at our apparent weakness. Now your empire will watch something different. They will watch your fleet burn. Communications expert Young Kim sent signals to the 3 hidden human warships. The Iron Fist, Starhammer, and Silent. Strike emerged from the asteroid field where they had been waiting. The single helpless colony ship was suddenly surrounded by 4 powerful human warships. This is impossible, whispered Admiral Kextol. How did you hide 4 ships from our sensors? The same way we hid our weapons from your scans, replied Captain Hyenwoo Kim. You see what we want you to see? You found a colony ship because that is what we wanted you to find. Cyber warfare specialist Hyojin Yoon activated the computer viruses she had planted in the Velthari systems. Across the alien fleet, communication systems began to fail. Weapon targeting computers started showing false readings. Shield generators began to malfunction. The trapped Velthari ships were helpless. They could not move because of the gravity. Well, they could not coordinate because their communications were compromised. They could not fight effectively because their targeting systems were corrupted. You wanted to make entertainment from our suffering, said Captain Hyenwoo Kim. Now you will provide entertainment for us. Your defeat will be broadcast across the galaxy as a lesson to any who think humans are easy prey, Admiral Kextol realized. With growing horror, that his mighty fleet had been trapped by beings he had thought were primitive and weak. The hunters had become the hunted. The trap had been sprung, and there was no escape. The battle began with a flash of light that could be seen from 3 star systems away. Captain Hyenwoo Kim gave the order, and 4 human warships opened fire on the trapped Velthari fleet. The aliens had nowhere to run and no way to fight. Back effectively, the New Dawn fired first. Its hidden weapon systems unleashed a storm of energy beams and missiles at the alien ships. What had looked like a helpless colony ship was now revealing itself as one of the most powerful warships in human space. Target their engines first, ordered Captain Hyenwoo Kim. I want them alive to see what happens next. Weapons engineer Mung-Hoon Seo aimed the ship's main guns at the alien vessels. The first shots disabled the engines of 3 Velthari cruisers. The ships spun helplessly in space, unable to move or escape. The Iron Fist attacked from the left side of the alien formation. Captain Min Jae-ko had waited months for this moment. His ship's heavy missiles struck the alien destroyers, ripping through their shields like paper. Direct hits on all targets, reported his weapons officer. Enemy shields are down. The Starhammer came from the right, its energy cannons blazing. Captain Haiwan Lim had trained her crew for exactly this kind of battle. Her ship moved like a dancer, avoiding the few shots the aliens managed to fire while destroying everything in its path. Their weapons are primitive, she reported to the other human captains. This is easier than target practice. The silent strike appeared directly. Above the alien fleet, Captain Taejin Park's ship was the newest and most advanced of the human vessels. Its experimental weapons cut through the alien armor like a hot knife through butter. Admiral Kextall watched in horror as his mighty fleet was torn apart by the human ships. His vessels were among the most powerful in the Velthari Empire, but they were helpless against the human attack. "Return fire," he shouted to his crew. All ships returned fire, but the alien ships could barely aim their weapons. The computer viruses planted by cyber warfare specialist Hyo Jin Yoon had corrupted their targeting systems. When they tried to shoot, their weapons fired in random directions. Admiral called his weapons officer. "Our targeting computers are not responding. We cannot lock on to the human ships." "Then fire manually," screamed Kextall. "Use visual targeting." Some of the alien ships managed to fire a few shots using manual controls, but the humans were ready. For this, the human ships moved with perfect coordination, avoiding the clumsy alien attacks while continuing their own devastating assault. Dr. Minho, Yoon monitored the gravity well generator from the New Dawn. The alien fleet remained trapped, unable to escape the invisible cage that held them in place. "Gravity well is stable," he reported to Captain Hyon Woo Kim. "The aliens cannot escape." "Good," replied the captain. "Make sure they have a front row seat for their own destruction." Communications expert Young Kim was broadcasting the entire battle across the galaxy. Just as the aliens had shared footage of the helpless frozen humans, now the humans were sharing footage of the alien. "Defeat. Signal is reaching all major star systems," she reported. "The whole galaxy is watching this battle." On the Velthari homeworld, billions of aliens who had been laughing at the frozen humans just hours before now watched in shock as their mighty fleet was destroyed. The footage showed their supposedly superior warships being torn apart by the humans they had mocked. "This cannot be happening," said one Velthari citizen to another. "Humans are weak. They were frozen and helpless." "Maybe we were wrong about them," replied his friend, fear creeping into his voice. The battle was swift and brutal. One by one, the Velthari ships were disabled or destroyed. The aliens who had boarded the human ship were either dead or captured. Their mighty fleet was becoming space debris. Marine Commander Junho Kwan led boarding parties onto the disabled alien ships. His soldiers moved through the alien vessels, capturing any survivors and securing their technology. "Alien ships are secured," he reported. "We have taken many prisoners for questioning." Security Chief Woo Jin Bei was interrogating the captured aliens on the New Dawn. The Velthari soldiers who had been mocking the frozen humans were now terrified prisoners themselves. "Please," begged Sergeant Nexgol. "We did not know. We thought you were helpless." "That was your mistake," replied Woo Jin Bei coldly. "You should have looked more carefully before you started laughing." Admiral Kextall's flagship was the last ship still fighting. The Death's Edge was badly damaged, but the alien admiral refused to surrender. He had built his reputation on conquering weaker species, could not accept that he had been defeated by beings he considered primitive. All remaining power to weapons, he ordered his crew. "We will take at least one human ship with us." But Captain Hyon Woo Kim had other plans. Instead of destroying the flagship, he ordered his ships to disable it completely. "I want the admiral alive," he told his weapons teams. "He needs to deliver our message to his empire." The human ships focused their fire on the flagship's weapons and engines. Within minutes, the Death's Edge was completely helpless. It drifted in space, unable to fight or flee. Captain Hyon Woo Kim opened a communication channel to the defeated admiral. His voice was calm but filled with authority. "Admiral Kextall," he said, "your fleet is destroyed. Your soldiers are captured. You have learned what happens to those who underestimate humanity." The alien admiral stared at the human captain with a mixture of fear and hatred. "How is this possible? You were frozen. You were helpless." "You were never helpless," replied Captain Hyon Woo Kim. "We were waiting. Cryogenic pods were not just for sleeping. They were part of our trap. We knew your kind would find frozen humans amusing. We counted on your arrogance." "You planned this," whispered Kextall in growing horror. "Of course. We planned this," said the human captain. "Did you think we would send colonists into dangerous space without protection? Every colony ship is also a warship. Every sleeping human is also a soldier ready to wake up when needed. The truth hit Admiral Kextal like a physical blow. The humans had not been victims. They had been hunters, using themselves as bait too. Lure the Valtheri into a trap. You will return to your empire, continued Captain Hyan Woo Kim. You will tell them what happened here. You will explain that humanity is not weak, and that attacking our people brings consequences. Dr. So-young. Lee and her medical team were now fully reviving all the colonists. Families were reuniting after months in cryogenic sleep. Children were playing in the corridors that had recently been filled with mocking alien soldiers. All colonists are awake and healthy, she reported. We are ready to continue our journey to establish the new colony. Excellent, said Captain Hyan Woo Kim. Release the flagship.
How?
Let them go home with our message. Dr. Minho Yoon deactivated the gravity well generator. Admiral Kextal's damaged flagship was suddenly free to move. The alien crew quickly started their engines, desperate to escape before the humans changed their minds, as the defeated Valthari ship limped away into space. Captain Hyan Woo Kim addressed his crew and the watching galaxy. Let this be a lesson. To all who would harm humanity, he said, we are not weak because we sleep in the cold of space. We're not helpless because we choose to freeze ourselves for long journeys. These apparent weaknesses are strengths when we face enemies foolish enough to underestimate us. The New Dawn and its escort ships resumed their journey to establish the new human colony. Behind them, the wreckage of the Valthari fleet served as a monument to the dangers of arrogance. The galaxy had learned an important lesson that day. Humans might appear vulnerable, but they were survivors who turned every disadvantage into an advantage. The frozen colonists were no longer a joke. They were a warning.